Nom, 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 nom. Hello! My name is Heather, and as always, I am reading with a vengeance. And I hope you are as well. Today, I am here to talk to you about women! So, not only is this month Women's History Month, but a couple days ago, what's today? Today's Thursday, so yesterday was it yesterday? No, Tuesday was International Women's Day. And on Tuesday, as many of you know by now, the Women's Prize for Fiction announced its longlist for 2022. If you are, like me, fairly new to the Women's Prize for Fiction, you opened up your booktube and on your homepage were all these videos of my reaction to the long list, my reaction to the Women's Prize for Fiction. So many reactions. I mean, the videos are all over the place. And I'm totally not poking fun at that. It's the word out, then I'm here for it. Because this time last year, I had never heard of the Women's Prize for Fiction. I don't even, should I be ashamed? I should be ashamed. I don't know. But that's not what this video is. This is not my reaction to the Women's Prize for Fiction. It's kind of like part of the video is going to be my experience with the Women's Prize for Fiction. I have a retroactive experience with the Women's Prize for Fiction. So a year ago, I was watching, I'm pretty sure it was Lauren from Lauren in the Books, who is currently my favorite booktuber. She started talking about the Women's Prize for Fiction. I'm like, what is this witchcraft? So, of course, at the time, I didn't really look it up. I just continued to follow her journey with the long list and the short list and all that kind of thing. And so about a month ago, when people started to talk about it and, you know, the bigger booktubers started to make videos about their predictions for the long list, I'm like, okay, I got to get into this. My interest is piqued. I got to look. I started researching the prize, and I'll put the link to their webpage down below in the description box. But basically, if you don't already know, the Women's Prize for Fiction started 26 years ago, where a group of literary folks, just people from all over the industry, authors, publishers, librarians, reviewers, everybody you can think of in the literary world, got together after the Booker Prize shortlist had come out somewhere in the early 90s, and the shortlist came out and there were no women on it. So all these people got together and said, what is this bullshit? Because I guess, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I want to say I read that like 60% of the authors that were nominated were women, or 60% of the long list that year. I can't remember the exact math, but the fact that a shortlist came out and there were no women on it, these people came together and said, not on my watch. So they got together, and the women's, at the time, it wasn't known as the Women's Prize for Fiction. I believe they called it the Orange Prize for Fiction at the time, based on their sponsor. Like I said, you can pop on the website and get the details. I won't go into the details on how books are nominated or submitted or anything like that, but every year they put out a long list of 16 books that are published from April 1st of the previous year to March 31st of the present year. They come out with a long list, authors all around the world. Then I believe it's at the end of April, they narrow that list down to a short list of 6 books. And then they come out with the prize. I think they come out with the prize in July. You might remember last year, Piranesi won. I'm still a little intimidated to start that. If you watch my other videos, I'm on kind of a journey with fantasy books. I'm not having great luck with them, but I haven't shut the door on them yet. But I digress. This isn't about me. This is about the books. Anyways, so that's the history behind the prize. It used to be called the Orange Prize, and they changed sponsors to Bailey's, and then I can't remember if they called it the Bailey's Prize, now referred to as the Women's Prize for Fiction. And as I said before, the long list came out on Tuesday, and I am here for it. Based in UK. That's another reason I'm really interested in it. If I didn't mention it before, it comes out of the UK, and I basically am obsessed with everything UK. well, I'm not as obsessed as I used to be. I would say I used to be obsessed with a capital O, and now I'm obsessed with a lowercase o. So if you want to look into who the judges are, how they judge, how they nominate, go ahead and go to the website. There's lots of great information, all the previous winners. There is some controversy with the prize that I read a little bit about. I'm not going to go into the details here. If you decide to research what that controversy is, go for it, but I strongly encourage you to deep dive, because there are some nuances that are important, and it would be easy to fall on sides, and I don't encourage that, but it's always a good thing to be informed. So I'm not going to go into the details of each book that's on the long list. I'll go ahead and flip them up here quickly just so you can see, but there's tons and tons of videos out there talking about each book. But before I get started with more books, I do want, in the name of supporting women, I want to throw a shout out to MJ over at Reading This Life. She does a series called Support Small Booktube, and I think it's once a week. It might even be more than that. She'll post a short little video, 6 to 8 minutes long, where she shouts out smaller booktubers, and she gave me a shout out earlier this week, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think we should all support each other as small booktubers, and I just want you to know, MJ, I support you, and I greatly appreciate your shout out. On with the books. Just really quickly, I'm going to go through them and I'll put their covers up. The long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction for 2022. We have Careless by Kirsty Capes, which is contemporary, kind of about the foster system. We have The Exhibitionist by Charlotte Mendelson, contemporary fiction. We have The Bread the Devil Knead by Lisa Allen-Agostini, and this is, I guess, feminist fiction. We have This One Sky Day, but what I learned is that I believe in the US it's published as Popisho. This is by Leone Ross, and this is fantasy magical realism. We have Flamingo by Rachel Elliott. This is contemporary fiction. We have Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, which is historical fiction. We have The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller, was a contemporary romance. And The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, which is magical realism, fantasy-ish. We have Creatures of Passage by Morowa Yejide, fantasy horror. We have Remote Sympathy by Catherine Chidgey, which is historical fiction. We have Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason, which is contemporary fiction dealing with mental health. We have The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak, is historical magical realism. We have Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Kupersmith, which is, I believe, historical fiction. We have Salt Lick by Lulu Allison, and we're dealing with dystopian sci-fi. We have The Sentence by Louise Erdrich, or Erdrich, I'm not sure. Erdrich? That's, I believe, a magical realism ghost story. And then we have The Final Revival of Opal and Neb by Dawnie Walton, which is historical fiction. Super excited about this list. Genres are across the board, which I love. I don't intend on reading the entire long list. I do intend on reading the short list. And how that's going to work for me is I have picked a few on here that I actually do want to read based on a couple of things. Based on, obviously, the synopsis sounds interesting to me. And I also go on Goodreads, and this is one of my favorite features of Goodreads. Well, I'll pull up a book, and if I'm interested in it, it shows you a list of books of, people who like this book also like these other books. And some of these books have like either some of my favorite books, some books that I've loved, some books I have on my TBR that I'm really excited about. So that's how I chose the books that I want to read to begin with. Now, when the short list comes out and I've read a bunch of books that don't make the short list, then I'll be reading some more books. But anyways, hopefully the books that I choose will be on the short list, just so I can get through the books I want to read. So the books that I'm really interested in are Careless, Great Circle, The Paper Palace, which I think got a lot of talk on Bookstagram, and I believe a lot of people were talking on BookTube too. Build Your House Around My Body, and The Sentence, and The Final Revival of Opal and Neb. So those I definitely want to read. And then some maybes: Remote Sympathy, Sorrow and Bliss, The Island of Missing Trees, and that one's leaning more towards I'm kind of interested because while the magical realism kind of worries me, historical fiction I do enjoy. And it's also getting, I mean, there's a lot of people talking about how this is a favorite of not only getting on the short list, but possibly winning this year. But right now it's a maybe. And the other ones, I don't know. I'm just not so sure about the other ones. Now I want to kind of go over my history. As I said before, I have kind of a retroactive history with the women's list. Once I started getting interested in this list, in this prize, I wanted to look back at previous longlisters, previous shortlisters, previous winners, and see what I've read and what I thought about them. And it is across the board. So I just kind of want to go over, I'm not going to put the pictures of the books because 100% of all these books I'm about to mention, you've heard of. But I'll just kind of tell you how so diverse these books are and how across the board, at least how I rated them. Anyways, not that that matters, but you get my meaning. So from the long list over the years, I have read Charming Billy, which if you watched a previous video, that was like my first DNF of the year. This was not for me, and that made it on the long list in 2000. Also in 2000, Girl with a Pearl Earring was on there by Tracy Chevalier. I gave that 2 stars. That didn't work for me. And to be fair, I'll also say that I started using Goodreads in like 2009, and so a bunch of these books that I put on my list that, oh yes, I read that, oh yes, I read that, and then I gave the star at the time, I used to rate books a lot more harsher or more harsh? More critically than I do now. So just put a pin in that. So from 2002, The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd, I gave that 4 stars. I really enjoyed that book. From 2003, The Lovely Bones, I really enjoyed that book. That's by Alice Sebold. Excuse me, why my coffee maker says I'm turning off. Anyway, ooh, speaking of which. Oh yes. Yes, The Lovely Bones. It shows I gave it 3 stars. I know I enjoyed it more than 3 stars. Not that 3 stars is a bad rating. I consider that a good rating. Yes, I liked it, but I'm pretty sure I enjoyed it more than 3 stars says I did. From 2004, I read The Amateur Marriage by Ann Tyler, gave that 3 stars. The Time Traveler's Wife, which I loved, by Audrey Niffenegger. I gave that 4 stars. I want to say it's more of a 4.5. The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri, I gave that 3 stars. And The Help made the long list, and I love that book, by Catherine Stockett, gave that 4.5 stars. From 2013, Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Gillian, I said it correctly this time. I did enjoy Gone Girl. I gave it 3 stars. I want to say maybe 3.5 stars. I'm going to talk a little bit more about my favorite Gillian Flynn because it's not Gone Girl. Anyway, also from 2013, The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. From 2015, I just read this. I talked about it in a wrap-up. Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I gave that 3 stars. I had a hard time with that one, but you know, I liked it. In 2018, I read Manhattan Beach by Jennifer Egan. I did not enjoy that one as much. I gave that 2 stars. Also from 2018 though is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. I love that book. I gave that 4 stars. So those were the long list books that I read, ranging from DNF 2 stars to 4 stars. Here are the shortlist books, the books that have made the shortlist over the years. In 1998, I read The Magician's Assistant by Ann Patchett. So I rated this 3 stars, but I remember enjoying this way more than 3 stars. I might have to go back there and change that. I really enjoyed The Magician's Assistant. From 1999, The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. That's a mouthful. Anyways, that's a favorite among book readers, but not with this girl. I gave that 1 star. I feel like this is one of the books, there's another one on this list too. I feel like this is one of the books I didn't read at the right time. I feel like if I reread it, it might resonate a little bit more with me, but I did not enjoy this read. I don't know why. I remember reading this for a book club I was in at the time, and everybody was like looking at me like I had 3 heads. Like, what's wrong with you? But yeah, I gave that 1 star. From 2000, Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood by Rebecca Wells. I love that book. I gave it 4 stars. White Teeth by Zadie Smith. I DNF'd that. Here's another one. I feel like I wasn't reading at the right time. I almost want, this is one of those, the few DNFs that I want to revisit and see if I have a better time with. 2001, The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood. I've had an interesting relationship with Margaret Atwood, which I might do another video about, but I gave Blind Assassin 2 stars. I had a hard time with that. Yeah. From 2003, The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. This was I think this is my only Donna Tartt that I've read, and I had a hard time with that too. I gave it 2.5 stars. I really wanted to like it. The ending gave it that half star. It had a really lovely ending, and this is another author that, you know, people read the Goldfinch, read the Secret History, you know, and I want to, but I'm so afraid because of this experience I had with The Little Friend. 2006, The History of Love by Nicole Krauss. I really liked that. Well, I liked it. I gave it 3 stars. 2011, Room by Emma Donoghue made the short list. I gave it 3 stars. I know I liked it more than that. I think I might go back there and bump that up to 4 stars. I really enjoyed Room. 2013, Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple. I loved that book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really loved that book, and I still haven't seen the movie. What is wrong with me? 2014, Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I read that just recently, and I wanted to love it more. I felt it was too long. It was beautifully written. Listen to it, and I think that might have been my mistake. I really enjoy listening to books, but some books are meant to be read on the page. I feel like this is one of them. I gave it 2.5 stars, and I feel bad about it. 2014 also had The Lowland by Jhumpa Lahiri. I gave that 2 stars. Didn't really care for that one either. The Paying Guest by Sarah Waters. I gave that 3 stars. I liked it. It was super long. I want to read Fingersmith by her. 2018, I read Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward. I really enjoyed that one. It looks like I gave it 3 stars. I feel it's more of a 3.5. I want to read the Salvage the Bones, but I'm afraid because it has a lot to do with, or it has not a lot to do with, but there's dog fighting, I think, and, you know, dog abuse, and I have a really hard time reading about that. 2020, Queenie by Candace Carty-Williams. I gave that 5 stars. I'm pretty sure that was on my list of my top 21 in 2021 books. I love that book a bunch. And then 2021, The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett made the short list, and I gave that 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I don't know why I can't remember why I didn't give it that extra up to 4 stars. Love it. I really enjoyed it, and there were parts that I loved, but it just didn't. Anyway, and here are the winners over the years that I have read, and man, just there's not that many. There's only 4.5. I'll explain that in a second. So from 2002, the winner, Bel Canto by Ann Patchett. I loved that book. It looks like I gave it 3 stars, but no, that's easily a 4 star, if not a 4.5 for me. I really enjoyed that book. 2005, We Need to Talk About Kevin won by Lionel Shriver. And I feel if I look at my Goodreads, and I'm pretty good at recording the books that I've read or want to read or whatever, and it shows that I didn't read it. And I think what happened is I think I watched the movie. It's unlike me to, if I'm interested in a movie and I find out there's a book, I'll want to read the book first. So it says I didn't read it, but anyway, so I'm just gonna go by that. I haven't read it. I watched the movie, so disturbing and brilliant. And I have a hard time reading a book after I've seen the movie. 2011, The Tiger's Wife by Tia Obrecht won. I gave that 2 stars. I did not enjoy that. So sad. 2012, Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. 5 stars, all the stars. It's like in my top 5, if not 3 books of 2021, and on my list of like favorites of all time. I loved Song of Achilles, if that isn't clear by now. And then finally, 2019, An American Marriage by Tayari Jones, and I gave that 4 stars. I really enjoyed that one. So it's all over the place as far as how I feel about books that make the short and long lists, and the winners. So I didn't have any reads from 2007, 8, 9, or 2017. I couldn't find the list for 2016, which I thought was weird, but you can look up the winner. I don't remember what it was. I think it was Home, and I know I didn't read that. So that's my experience with the Women's Prize. I'm really excited to follow it this year and upcoming years. You know, I read a lot of male authors. I'm a huge fan of Stephen King, white male, read most of his stuff. Carl Hyacin, white male, I've read most of his stuff. Sidney Sheldon, white male, I've read most of his stuff. Dean Koontz, white male, read most of his stuff. They're great white writers, but I do believe there should be a spotlight on women because yes, I am a feminist, and I am a feminist in the traditional definition of the word. The belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities. But getting back to the books, as soon as this list came out, I rushed to the library to see how many of them I could get. At least how many of the ones that I definitely want to read I can get. And I got 2. I got the final revival of Opal and Nev. I'm super excited. Yee! Then I was able to get The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. So anyways, hopefully I will be able to get through these soon. And then finally for this video, I want to talk about my long list of favorite female authors that I have read. And this is not an exhaustive list, it's just 16. I wanted to kind of stick with the theme of the Women's Prize. I chose these 16 based on a couple of things. Either they're authors that I continue to go back to, that I've read a bunch of their stuff and I will continue to read their stuff, or I've read all their books, or I've read a single book from them that was an all-time favorite or a 5-star read. So I'm going to give you that list of authors that made my long list of favorite female authors and books that I would recommend, at least just one book that I would recommend that you read by them, if you haven't already. A couple of these are favorites of a lot of readers. And in no particular order, number 1 is Liane Moriarty. The very first book I read of hers also ended up being my very favorite of hers, and that is The Husband's Secret. If you read nothing else by Liane Moriarty, read The Husband's Secret. Quick little story. When I read that, I listened to it and it was great. Liane Moriarty, I believe she's an Australian author, and a lot of her, if not all of her stories, take place in Australia. The narrator of her audiobooks is Australian, which is an extra charm for me, and really enjoyed it. Anyways, I was listening to the book. I was on a run with my husband, and there's a scene towards the end of the book, and if you know, you know, that literally made me gasp to the point where my husband stopped and he thought I was having some kind of heart attack. He's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, no, it's just my book. And of course, rolls his eyes up into his head and we continue on our run. But anyways, The Husband's Secret, Liane Moriarty, you are awesome. The next one on my list is Jodi Picoult. I think that's how you say it. Picoult or Picoult? It's really hard to pick a favorite. I have several of hers. What's really great about Jodi is she picks a controversial topic or just a hot button topic, and she writes a story about and really hits all the nuances about that topic in such a beautiful way and hard-hitting way and compelling way. I'm gonna give you a couple of my favorites. Small Great Things, she talks about race. 19 Minutes, school shooting. The Storyteller, the Holocaust. Leaving Time, well, that's not really a hard-hitting topic. It's a personal favorite of mine because it has to do with elephants. House Rules, autism, or Asperger's. I can't remember which. Anyway, if I were to pick just one of those for you to read, Small Great Things. Storyteller, Small Great Things, The Storyteller. Moving on, the next one, Gillian Flynn. Love her. I've read all 4 of her books, and 3. Dark Places is my favorite. If you've read Gone Girl, like, man, yeah, okay, read Dark Places, but it is dark. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Now, her book, like I said earlier, I gave 3 stars, Americana. I would still recommend it. It's beautifully written. I learned so much about Nigeria and the culture, and it was beautiful. The thing that I've read that I would recommend everybody read, and that is her essay, We Should All Be Feminists. And it is based, I've talked about this on a previous wrap-up. It's based on a TED Talk she gave. Absolutely fabulous. Loved it. My next author is Karen Slaughter. I love Karen Slaughter. Now, Karen Slaughter deals with like procedural crime mysteries, but she also deals with relationships. and she does it very well. I will give you a warning about Karen Slaughter. When she talks about a crime that's committed, they're usually gruesome crimes, and she can write the hell out of a gruesome crime. Just be warned. If you don't read anything else by her, read The Good Daughter. Chef's kiss. Candace Carty-Williams on this list. Obviously, she's only read one book. I hope she's coming out with something soon. But Queenie is fantastic. I highly recommend. Tana French, amazing. She has a series out, the Dublin Murder series. I've read all of those, and they go up and down. I think there might have been one that I gave 2 stars. It might have been a little bit harsh. But the first one, In the Woods, and the last one, The Trespasser, I mean, what a way to bookend a series. Although I don't know if she's coming out with anything more, but fantastic series. Lisa Gardner. She has a series. She has a couple of series, and she's also like a thriller. Like Karen Slaughter, she does crime mysteries, but hers are more thriller. Hers are even more page turner than Karen Slaughter. Karen Slaughter goes a little bit deeper into the story. Lisa Gardner, she just wants you to be on the edge of your seat, and she does a really good job. She has a couple of series following police people, but I would recommend the Detective Dee Dee Warren series. Super fun, fast paced. Lisa Geneva. I've only read one of hers. I've got several of hers on my TBR. The one that I recommend that was just a punch in the gut, Still Alice. Still Alice, they made a movie about it, but the book was so amazing, about a woman who is afflicted with early onset Alzheimer's, and the book is from her point of view, and it's devastating. A new favorite who made this list, Ryan Groden. I can't wait to read more of her stuff. I read Wolf by Wolf. I believe I mentioned that in a previous wrap-up. That has turned into one of my favorites. Absolutely great. And it's part of a duology, so I still have to read the second part in the duology, which I think is called Blood by Blood. Bryn Greenwood. She wrote probably one of the most controversial books in the past decade, and that she wrote All the Ugly and Wonderful Things, and that's the one book that I would highly recommend everybody read. But I warn you, deals with a controversial subject. If My Dark Vanessa made you feel uncomfortable, you might want to pass on this book. But this book was so beautifully written. The subject matter is so beautifully handled. I love Bryn Greenwood. Kristen Hanna. If you read nothing else, read The Nightingale. Absolutely beautiful. I'm partial to historical fiction, especially around World War II historical fiction. Jane Harper, another Australian writer. I've read all 4 of her books. My favorite is The Lost Man. That's the one I would recommend today. She's a fantastic writer. And this list would be incomplete without the absolute golden child of the last couple of years, and that's Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've read, I want to say 4 or 5 of her books. Obviously, I've read Daisy Jones and the Six and a couple of her older ones. But if you read nothing else by Taylor Jenkins Reid, read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. You will be pleasantly surprised at what you find, I think. Because I think a lot of people who haven't read it yet think it's something that it's not. Kirsty Lefteri. I've only read one of her books. I plan on reading others, obviously. Her book, The Beekeeper of Aleppo, ended up being on my top, I think it was in my top 10, if not my top 5 of 2021. Absolutely stunning book. I can't wait to read some of her other stuff. And finally on this list, Min Jin Lee. She wrote Pachinko. Such a beautiful, this probably would have been on my favorites of last year had I read it last year, but I read it a couple of years ago. Absolutely stunning book. I'm really pleased to see that it's becoming more popular. I've seen people recently talk about this book on their BookTube channel, and even I've seen it on Bookstagram, and I believe they've made a movie, if not a mini series. I can't remember, but stunning historical fiction, Korean, Japanese, absolutely highly recommend. So those are my 16 authors, my long list of favorites. I hope you found a book to add to your TBR. If you've read any of these, were they your favorites as well? I'd love to hear. Opinions are absolutely welcome here. And then finally, to round up this video today, I want to talk about new to me women authors on my TBR that I want to read soon. The first one is Elle McNichol. I have A Kind of Spark on my list. I haven't read Ya Gyasi yet. I want to read her Homegoing. Georgia Hunter, I have We Were the Lucky Ones on my list. Here's a booktube favorite, Hanya Yanagihara, and I want to give A Little Life a try. I hear it's a really sad book. Marjan Kamali, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but I have The Stationery Shop on my TBR. Jana de Leone, I have a couple of books. I have Malevolent, which was like a free download, so I have that on my Nook. And then I feel like a booktuber, I can't remember who, but she recommended a series by this author, and the first one is called Louisiana Longshot. I want to give Robin Hobb a try. Now, I'm on this fantasy journey, and I feel like her books might get me over that hump of fantasy. She's got, I think, a couple of series that sound so good, but that is my experience with fantasy. The synopsis sounds so good, and then I read it and I'm like, what am I doing here? I want to read The Assassin's Apprentice. Beth Ann Roberts. Now here's, I've only heard of Beth Ann Roberts because this is kind of a roundabout way I came to this. Harry Styles, who I am inappropriately obsessed with, is doing a movie called My Policeman. The premise sounded so good. I saw that it was based on a book. I looked it up. It sounds amazing. So anyways, so Beth Ann Roberts, My Policeman. I want to read that. And finally on this list, I wanted to give Becky Chambers a shot. And I've already actually started a book by her. I'm currently reading, because she was super popular in the past couple of years with her Wayfarers series. The first of which being A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which is definitely on my TBR. And it's even bumped up further up on my TBR because I am currently reading A Psalm for the Wild Built, and I am loving it. I am absolutely loving it. I'll probably be I will be talking about this with my March wrap up. So yes, I'll probably finish that today. So that's my list of new to me authors that I want to try. Are any of these your favorite authors? What have you read by these authors? Have you read any of these books? Tell me, I must know. That's all I have for you today, talking about all the women authors. Well, not all of them, but some of them. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found some books that perhaps you haven't heard of that you've added to your TBR. If you've made it this far in this video, I really appreciate a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.